What's up, comic and pop culture fans? This is James with Mint Hunter Comics, and today I'm giving you 10 comics that nobody wants. Whether it be single issues or full arcs, these are the books that left viewers disappointed, bored, or just holding no aftermarket value. I can say, as a person who's sold comic books, these are the books where even if you slap 50 cents on them, people don't want them. I'd love to hear what entries you have, so pop them in the comments down below and we'll get started. Oh, and if you've got a spare $1.99 a month, consider joining the channel. You get access to early videos, exclusive polls, all kinds of stuff. Going forward in the new year, this is now my main job. Call me stupid, but there it is, so that can kind of go a long way. First entry is a single issue book. Most of this list is actually complete arcs. This is a single issue with Morbius #2. Can you take a wild guess why no one wants this book? It's not controversial. It's not a terrible story. That's right, it's the cover. This is one of those ones that gets totally filed into the hilariously hideous covers. Now, everything's perspective, and some people could say that could be a good thing, and it actually bleeds into the so bad it's good territory. But for the most part, the average collector doesn't want something like that on their wall. It's just not quite the look that they're going for. In Morbius's defense, it was the 90s. We were loaded up with weird looking covers, but you can only use that as a crutch so much. You see this in dollar bins a lot, and they usually tend to stay there. Next entry is any Bloodlines book. This 90s Bloodlines run bled, pun intended, into every single title going on at the time. It was dragged out, it was very expansive, no one liked it. It does have one ridiculously nice key in the middle of it though. That Demon #2 annual Bloodlines, it is the first appearance of Hitman. That is a nice key, but other than that particular book, this is one that is the king of the dollar bin box, or king of the 50-cent bin, I should say. No one you know is putting together a full Bloodlines run. And that's not even mentioning how much of a ripoff it was of Alien. It's one of those few arcs that people try to forget, although ironically it was rebooted in modern continuity, and it was done a little bit better and kept significantly shorter. Next up is Thor issue 502. Right on the cover and in the interior pages, this is Thor's new, absolutely grotesque, terrible, ugly, no good Thor costume. Suddenly and without notice, apparently Thor joined in with the Wildcats and didn't tell anyone. There's also no acknowledgement in the actual book of the costume change anywhere. We're just supposed to accept it. I think of all the silly 90s costume changes, and I think this might be my personal least favorite one. There's a couple bad ones, but this one really hurts. It's just too goofy to take seriously, and there's lots of other ones that people don't like, but this particular one I chose to hone in on. This is a book that does not move. This next one, in my opinion, is one of the only ones on this list that shouldn't be on here, but unfortunately is, and that is Batman Confidential. There was something like 55 issues from this run. It was right before the New 52 when they decided to release this volume, and it came out on a monthly basis, and the stories within were actually pretty good. I particularly found that the run started strong. However, of all the many Batman volumes, Batman, Detective Comics, Shadow of the Bat, Legends of the Dark Knight, even Gotham Knights, this is the one that gets buried. Batman Confidential books don't move. Sometimes some of the covers don't help it. There have been some covers that aren't on the cute side of things, but that's no excuse. These are actually good books. There were some definite good stories in there, but no one either knows what they are or has no interest in picking them up. Surprise yourself next time you're floating through a 50-cent bin. You see this? Try picking it up. Put together a run, maybe. It's not bad. This next entry is courtesy from Joe over at 360 Comics, and he said, any X-Force book over issue 15. Yo, that is really funny. Except for issue 116, I'm pretty sure that's true. Yeah, I gotta say, when you're doing claim sales and stuff, if it's over X-Force issue 15, keep it in the dollar bin. I mean, there are little small keys, but Good luck even putting a $3 price tag on them after issue 15. They get pretty hard to move. If you ever see dollar bins, chances are you're going to be seeing a lot of X-Force in there because it was actually popular at the time. A lot of people had it, but nobody kept it. Not just for the fact that the keys trickle out and nothing of major importance happens from that standpoint, but I think the quality petered out too with some of the gimmickiness of the time, and it's just a little bit of a dated book that went on for quite some time. The majority of people that reach out to me asking to sell the collection is like 60% of it X-Force. While I'm happy to pick it up, it does just sit, so it's kind of like one person passing on some fluff to another person. It is hard to move, it is. The best bet you can do is try to complete a full run and move it like that. Next is the countdown to Final Crisis. It's funny because as good as Final Crisis was, the countdown event was so long, so expansive, and so boring. Does anyone actually remember what happened in the countdown to Crisis? Because I don't. I'm pretty sure Comicstorian does the full story. I should totally hit it again, but I just remember not liking it. I like Final Crisis too. That's the thing that's so weird. You have to consider that Final Crisis is one thing, and the countdown to Final Crisis is just a whole nother thing, man. Not to be confused. The funny thing about that too is that was during a time where I was really into all the DC events. I thought that DC events in the 2000s were really good. I really liked Infinite Crisis. I was liking a lot of the stuff coming out at the time. Countdown didn't do it for me. Next up is Eternal Warrior. Of all the Valiant comics related superheroes and characters, this is one of those ones that's great, but no one seems to collect it anymore. Valiant comics often do get pushed in the back. Harbinger, Exo Manowar, and a few others still have that sweet spot where their first appearances and first issues people still want. But it does not carry over into Eternal Warrior. I can't tell you how many times at my local comic book shop, everywhere I go, cons, this and that's, the 50-cent bins, it's all Eternal Warrior books. No, nobody wants them. It's kind of a shame because I remember reading it and liking it, but it does hold practically no value. If you want to have some fun and pick it up just for reading material, I recommend you do it. But resellability, it's not going to be there for that one. Next up is the obvious cash grab of Civil War 2. Civil War 1? Good. Well, Marvel made Civil War the movie. The most part, people really liked it. Well, they wanted to get the comic books going with a Civil War 2. They also wanted to push Captain Marvel, who was at the forefront of Civil War 2. And she basically has the role of Iron Man from the first Civil War comics. This one really petered out, though. It felt so much like an obvious attempt to get people to read the comics because of what was happening in the movies, and they didn't seem to focus on an ending. It really petered out, and I actually don't know if I really remember the ending, to be honest with you. Oh, and the tie-ins? Dear God, what a list. There are so many connecting issues to Civil War II. It's nauseating. And the thing is, I've seen expansive events where you have tons of issues tying into this book, and it works because the story is good. You can pick up the omnibus a decade later when it comes out, and you love it. Let me give you a great example. This is the Blackest Night omnibus, and look how fat that sucker is. And you know what? I've reread this 3 times. It is huge, it is expansive, but it's amazing. So, Civil War II is not Blackest Night, man. Second to last entry here is any Superman book from 2003 to 2011. Which is weird because people like to make fun of some of the New 52. It didn't really do it for them. But when New 52 came out, it was exciting because Superman books had been weak for quite some time. There is some slight exception with Kurt Busiek and a little bit of John's stuff. But as a diehard Superman, I thought that that might be and still is the weakest pocket of Superman books that we have seen yet. From a collecting perspective, it's also pretty barren in the terms of any keys. There's not that many. The ones there are quite small. Just a weird little pocket of time, I think, for Superman. But as I stated in a recent video, I'm glad I didn't turn my back because Action Comics in 2022, I think, is the best Action Comics we've gotten in like a decade. There's ups and downs all the time, and that 2003 to 11, I think, was a little bit of a down, in my own personal opinion. And the last entry I'm going to give you for books no one wants, these are the ones that sit and rot in those 50-cent bins, is 90s Valiant back issues. I already mentioned Eternal Warrior. Well, so much more of Valiant stuff, if it's not those issue number 1s or issue 0s, sits. Nobody touches it, nobody picks them up. The funny thing is, those books are not unpopular. People still like to read the collected editions. But as for picking it out of the dollar bins and taking it home with you, people don't seem to want to touch it with a pole. Ask any comic book shop owner that gets comic book collections in on a semi-regular basis what the number one thing they don't want to see walk through the shop: Valiant back issues. They're not going to hardly give you any money for them at all. I heard someone say that they are essentially worthless. I don't think any comic book is worthless, especially from the stance of you could complete a run and get some nice reading material, but hot doggy, you are going to have a hard time with the reselling. Luckily, because no one wants them, you could complete a full run pretty easily because they're all still in the dollar bins. No one's grabbed them up. Perspective, man. Two sides to a coin. What stories, what graphic novels, what arcs do you know that nobody wants? Whether it has no collectability, whether you've just noticed from personal experience you can't even get rid of it. These are the books that if you took them to a comic book shop, they'd ask you to give it as a donation. They won't even pay you for them. Let me know down in the comments. Collect what you love to collect and read what you love to read, and keep on hunting.